Alright, so I'm here with Stefan, and here's our next section.
Yeah, this is about the beginning of the Cold War area. We have the vehicles from the 1950s and the 1960s.
Gotcha, okay. Well, let's take a look at our first vehicles. So here's another one that you're not going to see anywhere else but here at Arsenalen. So tell us about this incredibly special vehicle.
This is the prototype for the Swedish self-propelled gun called bandkanon. And it was produced in the early 1960s. So this is the only vehicle that was made, since it's a prototype, with the same chassis as the Kranwagen that's within World of Tanks.
Yeah, that's going to be known and beloved by World of Tanks players, but the Kran, explain to other people.
Yeah, it's a test vehicle that was supposed to be the next generation of a Swedish heavy tank. With a massive turret and a massive gun, but it never went beyond the chassis test vehicle stage. So it was cancelled and we bought Centurions instead. So this chassis was used to produce the self-propelled gun instead, with a massive turret with a 155mm gun, self-propelled and automatic loaded. So this vehicle with its gun could do everything on its own.
Wow.
It doesn't really need any supporting crew behind or whatever.
How many rounds did it carry?
It could carry 14 rounds in the ammunition storage, and it could fire all 14 rounds in one row, in one sequence, within 40 seconds.
Wow.
But that's not a way to fire this kind of ammunition, so they fired perhaps 3 together with other vehicles. So they fired 1, 2, 3, and then moved to fire another 3 in another direction. So it could fire and then get onto the move again, find another location and fire again.
Awesome.
And it has a firing range of 25 kilometers, which was at the time incredibly long.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So from this prototype, what are some of the things that are changed for the ones that went into production?
Most of the chassis is changed. Turret is almost the same, but the chassis is totally different. It was made by Landsverk, and the production line was made by Bofors. So they used parts from the S-Tank project and put into the chassis of this one. So the production looks a lot different on the chassis.
Okay, that's awesome. Not going to see this thing anywhere else, though.
And one interesting thing is that it said that this vehicle was supposed to be able to fire nuclear rounds. But it never went that far.
Did they never test it?
No, they cancelled the project long before it went into production. There are rumors that the American president said to the Swedish prime minister at the time, no.
I mean, we had artillery, we had SPGs that could load nuclear rounds.
Yeah, but it said that the Americans said, we handle the nuclears.
I see.
You don't.
I see.
And as a neutral country, as we thought we were, we listened to America as the allied. That was, in fact, what we were. We had only one enemy, Soviet Union. But we thought we were neutral.
Yeah. So it was never tested with a nuclear round?
No.
Did Sweden have nuclear or anything at the time?
We developed nuclear ammunition, but it was never spoken about.
Okay.
So how far it went, somebody knows, but it's not official.
Gotcha, okay. Anything else that was special about this particular thing, and how did it, so it talks about, you fire 3 at a time, and I'm not very familiar with, because I know in older vehicles you had to sort of recalibrate when you shoot. How does it work with this?
Not in this one. They had a problem with the rounds firing hole into hole after each other.
You don't need to shoot more than 3 times. I mean, golly boy, by that time
so
it's gone.
they had to build in an adjustment to be able to spread out instead of firing at the same spot. So it was too accurate.
Okay. Did they have to? So then was it automatic that it would, in those 3 rounds, fire at a slightly different spot, or would you have to do that manually?
I'm not sure if they did it from the beginning manually or automatic.
Okay. But as a crew member, you'd want to be sure that you're not just, because again, you don't need to fire once you 155 millimeters.
And then when the ammunition storage was empty, they came up with a small tractor with a crane, lifted out the whole package, replaced it, and then off you go again.
Okay. How long would that process take?
A couple of minutes.
Okay. Wow.
So it's an impressive vehicle.
Yeah, it can put out a lot of firepower.
Yeah.
That's right. Very cool. So this is a unique beastie.
Yeah, we could say. It's an old chassis from the Second World War, stridsvagn model 42, that we had, and the gun and the turret was not that efficient anymore, so they decided to upgrade it with a bigger turret and a bigger gun.
All right.
So it was a sort of a cheap solution to make something better out of what we had.
Okay. What do we call this thing?
It's called stridsvagn 74. It's the 4th vehicle with a gun over 70 millimeter.
Ah, okay.
So they changed the system of counting.
Okay, and then what happened with it?
Well, it was in use from 1950 and used as a tank until the 1960s, and then it was converted and used as an infantry support vehicle until early 1980s, in fact, before that was scrapped.
Okay.
And when the chassis was removed, they used the turret as coastal defense on the Swedish borders until the 1990s.
Oh, wow. Okay, so was this considered a successful design?
Not really. Gun is pretty good, but the rest was not the standard at the 1950s, 1960s. It was better than nothing, but comparable to, for instance, the French MX-13, a light vehicle with a okay gun, but not as a tank.
Ah, okay.
And the interesting thing with this is, if you look at it from the side, it's quite impressive.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from the front, it's quite narrow and high. So there was a joke about this tank. It was the only tank in the world that could stand and hide behind a telephone pole and shoot over it because it was so narrow.
Yeah, it has interesting dimensions. Like you said, it looks like a completely different type of vehicle from the side.
Yeah.
And then it's is the height problematic?
No, not really. It happened that they flipped over, but it wasn't more than a few times. I think more problematic was the weight of the chassis was a bit too much. It was designed to carry a weight of 22 tons, and in this configuration it weighs 26.
Oh, shit.
So it was a bit too much.
Okay. And then with one, because I know you kind of look at the tank designs around the time, and you have a lot of the Soviet vehicles are really low profile. You have later tanks, you really see lower and lower if possible. So what are some advantages that, like, to me, when I look at this, the turret is really tall. What might be some advantages of that design?
One positive thing with this is that you have a better view on long ranges. But on the other hand, it can be quite difficult to hide it.
Right.
But of course, if you go up behind the slope, you can depress the gun a bit more. So in that case, it could be more effective.
Okay, so thinking with Swedish terrain and the intended use of what could have happened at the time, would that have been more successful than a lower profile tank design?
In some cases, yes,
okay.
but not everywhere. It depends on where in Sweden you're supposed to. You could probably travel through a wood more effectively with a narrow tank instead of having to knock down all the trees.
Okay.
But in the south of Sweden, where there's no woods, not that good.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.